Hi there, guys. Welcome back to el podcast del Salón de Idiomas. Hi, Rox. How are you doing?
Hi, fine. I'm very excited about today's topic.
Yeah, really. I thought that maybe it could be because you may be looking for someone who is 100% always available for you to solve any doubts that you may have regarding language learning.
Well, definitely. that's yeah, that's the main point. And for I was told and I heard about ChatGPT for a long time now. I think like at least a couple of years. And I happened because I've been like researching into some stuff, basically health issues and stuff. For some reason, I got inspired and said, "Oh, why don't I just directly ask ChatGPT?" Now I have to admit that my boyfriend is telling me, he's like, lately you've been talking more to ChatGPT than you have talking to me. It's like an endless fountain of knowledge.
As a matter of fact, I have to admit that there is not a single day that I don't use ChatGPT.
It makes sense for everything.
Yeah.
Though I am a bit scared, I have to admit, because like now, whatever doubts I may have, like on different ends, not just necessarily on health stuff, which was the primary reason why I decided to get into using ChatGPT, the free version though, is that even for like basic things, like sometimes I'm asked at work because guys, there's like a whole team behind the content you see online in Salón de Idiomas. At times I'm asked, it's like, hey, which options you like most from these two versions for a photo, let's say. They like the team creates some publications, and before they release them or post them, they ask me and the rest of the team is like, which one do you think it works better? So they give me choices, and at first I was like doubting, and now because I'm a bit in a rush, I just upload the photo to ChatGPT, ask them, tell me which works best for a publication, which is the one, I don't know, I think I learned the parameters to ask him. And even for those basic stuff like deciding, I'm asking ChatGPT. So I'm honestly a bit scared. It's like, is it going to be like that? Am I going to lose like my own cognition skills of being capable of comparing stuff, at least in that
You're
end?
gonna lose your own criteria and be like, I'm just gonna trust whatever ChatGPT says.
You trust
Hope
it
not.
because it's like it does know
Yeah.
what to use and how to do it.
Now, I'm just wondering if the marketing is gonna get fired eventually. I hope not.
No, I don't think so. No, never. It has never crossed my mind.
Okay, so today we're gonna be talking about AI, but more accurately, when we're talking about language learning, since as we have mentioned, especially ChatGPT is the one that we're using, you and me. Of course, there are many other AI models that you can use. However, they basically end up being extremely useful for whatever tasks you may need, or questions, or doubts, or whatever, right? So, of course, there has been a rise of the AI tutors when you're learning a language, and it makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, not only is this going to have all the functions of ChatGPT or any kind of AI, but it's also going to be available all the time. Likewise, most of these robots are absolutely much cheaper rather than compared to a real person, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, even a lifetime subscription costs like hundreds of euros, and of course, if you compare that to a
Yeah,
real
to
teacher,
paying for
Yeah.
the service to a human.
Yeah.
It's quite a difference.
So,
And you can customize it, right?
correct. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can make it look like a parrot even, which is very fun.
Yeah.
However, I digress. The point here is that I wanted to know, is this actually as useful as it may be or as it sounds? Well, plenty of individuals have actually pointed out that it's not really efficient, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that it feels extremely awkward. Likewise, it's not really helpful. That it's basically like, I don't know, regular learning apps, but just a step a bit further. But basically, it revolves around the same concept. So I did a little bit of digging.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to see like what are the most common things that people would say. So firstly, people would say something like, well,
Like against or in favor of using AI?
Yeah, like more like what are the problems with AI when it comes to learning a language, right?
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
So at first I was like hoping to be more like, well, of course it's gonna be super obvious. All these issues are blatantly obvious. However, I stumbled upon
Sorry,
many
obvious in terms of what? Of like not being 100% useful?
yeah, like it's obvious where they are not going to be useful. So
Yeah.
common complaints were that, well, they make a lot of grammatical mistakes, and then of course you're learning something that is not true and you don't even know, and you're trusting a robot. And I'm like, well, yes, of course, it's a big concern. So of course, I
Yeah.
went I started with ChatGPT, and I like was writing many things, and I didn't see any grammatical mistakes. So I was like, that seems odd. Then I actually started a free trial. I have to admit, I'm not gonna pay full service, but I started a free trial on one of these language tutors, and they don't make any grammatical mistakes either.
Okay.
Like I was like learning English. I mean, of course, there's some English that I can still learn. Everybody's learning all the time. However, I was like, yeah, I'm a beginner learning English,
Okay.
and it was not making any mistakes, like not at all. So that's not the case.
Yeah, I think it's pretty assessed, right? They
Yeah.
wouldn't provide those services if they did make mistakes.
Yeah. So the second complaint that I found
Okay.
was that it can be actually useful for beginners. However, for advanced levels, it's not good at all, especially perhaps not advanced, but maybe when you are like in that intermediate level where you can actually have conversations. However, you're still struggling to make them sound more native-like.
Oh,
Right?
right. Because at first I would think that it's actually more useful for advanced learners than for the ones starting to learn and having A levels. Because one may think that because you already have some knowledge of the language, it's easier for you to know how to play with this AI,
Yeah.
right? So it's not like that.
No.
Okay, well, that's
No,
interesting.
because of these things. For example, one common complaint that I saw was, well, AI doesn't understand slang. So I was like, yeah, perhaps if I say something like it's a piece of cake, they're gonna get it wrong. Wow, that would be a huge mistake. So
Yeah, especially for abstract and
Yeah, yeah.
idioms and abstract learning and vocabulary.
nevertheless, again, I went back to ChatGPT, and then I asked it, "Hey, ChatGPT, what's the T?" And then it literally let me read the answer because I thought that it was like actually hilarious. It said, "Hey, not much. Just here spilling knowledge instead of drama. What's up with you?"
Oh my god, and it's even funny.
Yeah. So I even replied, "Wow, you caught my drift. Impressive." And then it says, "Of course, gotta match the vibe. So what's the latest in your world?"
Wow, and it even actually has an emoji.
Yeah, even an emoji, yeah, with sunglasses and everything. So, like when you say what's the tea, it's like what's the gossip, right? So that's not the thing. At least in the case of ChatGPT, they understand this slang.
Okay.
However, then I went to my tutor, and then they said the next thing. Let me play this, okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna hear, and it's gonna be so awkward.
Hey Emma, what's the tea?
Hey, Alonso. The tea is just a fun way to ask for the latest news or gossip. So, what's been going on with you? Any interesting stories to share?
I just wanted to know if you could catch my drift.
I see what you're saying. It's like catching someone's meaning or feeling. Sometimes, slang and phrases can be tricky. What are some slang terms you like to use?
So there you have it.
Yeah. Don't you think that, okay, so basically here it didn't keep up with your vibe. It just explained what you asked him or her, sorry, Emma. Don't don't you believe that that may stem from the fact that it's a learning app, or it's more aimed at actually teaching than just interacting?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I think that for advanced learners is not actually useful. Since
Okay, yeah.
like an advanced learner, like of course, an advanced learner knows what's the T. That could be useful for someone who is a beginner. However, a person that is a beginner wouldn't say what's the T. They would say something like, "What is the meaning of what's the T?"
I got it.
Right?
Okay.
So like it's kind of like awkward. Like it doesn't work for anybody. So like of course
Yeah.
there is a lack of understanding human nature here, right?
I see what you mean. Well, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely much useful for the ones learning at first, especially those expressions.
Yeah. And have you found anything that you say, oh my God, this is definitely an AI? It is so obvious, or perhaps not really?
Well, you can easily catch the lack of human touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least in my case with ChatGPT. Now, mind you, it does, I mean, depending on the settings that you have, it does adapt or not to your style. That's a fact. Because like in my case, I remember clicking on a thing that it would allow the application to match my style. So like when I'm talking to it, it talks back like the same way I talk to it.
Oh, that's actually very
Like
cool.
the same style and stuff. Yeah, it is. However, I'm not sure whether it's because I haven't spoken much about emotions. However, there was a time I recall I had a pretty bad day, and I remember telling ChatGPT, I'm a bit angry. I believe I wanted just to, I don't know, to blow off some steam, and because it was the closest right then to interaction with someone.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm really angry this day and I have this problem. How can I work it out? How can I solve it? And it replied back like, oh, okay, that's completely normal to be, to feel like that in these specific situations. And now there are ways of actually solving the problem, and these are this, that. So you could tell that it's a robot. You could tell that the answers that it provided me with, at least in that specific case, were some like just random strategies on how that you can actually find on any blogs.
Yeah.
On how to deal with it. And at times you just don't need strategies. You just need someone to listen to you or to provide that kind of comfort that you need in that time. So I didn't actually feel it. So I believe the human touch is like key to learning effectively.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure to what extent, at least so far, this AI is providing that.
Absolutely. And to my mind, like many of these problems that I have just explained probably are going to be solved later on. Like probably there's going to be a smarter AI that is going to be able to apply these slangs correctly. Likewise, that is not gonna sound so robotic if like it can provide more accurate feedback. However, the point here is that it's always going to lack that actual real human interaction, even if it's actually giving you something really cool. Like for instance, in this case, like now not here and spilling some knowledge instead of drama. That like I thought that was actually funny. That was funny, but that was more like I didn't expect it. Not like wow, this is so cool. He's understanding me. No, this is not understanding me. It's just like following a pattern or whatever.
Yeah,
So-
but a pretty accurate one.
Yeah, even it's a pretty accurate one. So here I want to talk about something that we all know and love. At least this is one of my favorite things to talk about, which is the ZPD, or Zone of Proximal Development, right?
Yeah.
So that is the point. Like here, it is absolutely necessary to have that human interaction to see, to perfectly match a teacher. Of course, is going to be capable of matching what the necessities the student has are. Likewise, how to accommodate your assessment as well as your methods in order for your student to thrive, right?
Definitely, especially assessment.
Yeah.
I mean, this is related. There are some exams which you can do nowadays, like official exams, and some of them are like 100% corrected by AI. And the problem that apparently arises there is the fact that the pronunciation and intonation mapping is not that good. At
Yeah.
least not so far, not that good.
Yeah.
I mean, a human can easily detect that and can easily adapt, can know how to better assess someone. Whereas if you do it with an AI, which has these really specific criteria, the standards are really high.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly, and of course, you also have to consider that it's not just about like verbal communication; it is also like the non-verbal communication, right?
Oh, that's another
Depending
important
on the body
aspect.
language, as
Yeah.
well as like even the tone of voice that is going to also show whether the student is feeling confident or perhaps not that much, or if there is frustration in their voice or something along those lines, right? So now. AI, in order for AI to reach this, that has to become something like sci-fi, and then of course
Well, you never know eventually, but so far, I believe it's not feasible.
yeah. So that would be like my biggest point right here. Now, I do have a question. What about audio? Do you think that is super easy to notice when you are listening to an AI, or not that much?
Well, in my short experience using AI, it was pretty obvious.
Yeah, right? You think so?
Yeah, a bit too robotic, or some nuances there.
I mean, definitely my conversation with the AI tutor was painfully evident. It felt so awkward. I have to admit that I felt so awkward. It's like, not only was it like slow, but it was also like, I don't know, I'm feeling like I'm just ordering a pizza and it's not working out. This is so annoying.
Yeah, the other day, speaking of awkwardness, the other day I was in a mall. I was shopping. I needed a pair of new trainers, and so out of the blue, I see these two teenagers, and they just place their phone, like somewhere on the floor, and they started dancing. And of course, like when you see a reel of that with the music and everything, it does make sense because you're used to seeing that. But oh my God, what an awkwardness and so weird stuff. Seeing it out of the blue, just minding your business, and someone in front of you just starting to do like these crazy movements with no music, nothing. So that was awkward.
Wow, yeah, I didn't think about that. Wow, that has to feel so. Oh my
It's so awkward. I mean, I feel this kind of like, oh, I feel the embarrassment for them, but obviously they were not embarrassed. So I mean, I guess it's this kind of awkwardness. It's a thing that we will keep witnessing in the future. And talking of technology, I think that's like that.
Now that actually takes me to another interesting point. There was another idea that's actually from a Forbes article, and it was this article is called "The Rise of AI Tutors," and basically this is a person that was explaining that he has a son that is millennial, okay, and this person is a boomer, right? So that his son was actually doing a lot of learning with AIs, whereas this person was not, and it felt like this is so uncomfortable, and so on and so forth. However, his son was explaining, well, actually, it's just at first, then you get used to it, and that's fine. So perhaps this is also a perception from us that we are not used to this. However, future
Definitely.
generations could perhaps benefit more from this, as they wouldn't feel that awkward about this.
Definitely.
And of course, in the future, it's going to improve. Now, I deviated a little. So that was another thing, that it's a common complaint that it's too obvious when you listen to an AI, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to do a little test. This is for you and this is for our listeners. You gotta tell me which of these audios is an AI and which of these audios is a person, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Great. So let's go with the first one.
Artificial intelligence has revolutionized language learning by offering instant feedback and personalized study plans. While AI enhances efficiency, it cannot fully replicate human interaction or cultural nuances.
Okay, so that's the first one. Now, what do you think?
I'm in between because it does sound like 100% like a native speaker, like a human speaking, because it has these awkward pauses which we
Okay.
humans make. Yet it sounded as if he was just reading something for piece of news. So that might make me believe that it might have been AI generated. However, that's just because of the whole stuff, like the way it's being the information is being provided, but not because of intonation or pronunciation. That was like spot on.
Okay, interesting. So you would say that it's AI or person?
I mean, I will go with AI, but because you raised the doubt, and
Okay.
I'm thinking that perhaps I have to be careful with the
Okay.
with what sounds human.
Okay, then let's go with the next one.
AI tutors are great for quick corrections and extra practice, but they can't replace real conversations or cultural context. They're helpful. Just don't rely on them too much.
That's AI.
That's AI. You think so?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Perhaps because it's too perfect.
It was way too perfect.
Yeah.
Interesting. You wouldn't notice any like human mistakes. Okay.
I think that was AI.
Okay, I'm gonna give you the final verdict at the end, okay?
Okay.
So let's keep guessing. Okay, so now let's go with another one. I don't know if you also notice how like the way that they are talking is also different.
Yeah.
Like one is like one has a different style, so that's another thing. Let's go with this one.
Conversing with artificial intelligence for language practice enables structured interaction and error correction. However, the absence of emotional reciprocity may hinder the development of authentic communication skills.
It was like 100% human, but the end of it, the way it says skill,
Okay.
it made me think it might have been AI, but it's almost indistinguishable.
Okay. Let's go with the last one, and then you tell me what is your final verdict.
Talking to an AI tutor feels like speaking into the void. No real reactions, no small talk, just a polite but slightly eerie wall of text.
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely AI.
Okay. So what is your final verdict? Which ones are AI and which aren't?
I listened to like 4.
You listen to 4 audios.
I would say that at least 3 of them are AI.
Okay. And what do you think, guys? What do you think? Which ones are real and which ones aren't? Okay. So the catch is that actually all of them are AI.
Okay.
Okay. So for you, they're like, even like for instance, that one, like it sounds way too perfect. And that is exactly the point. Like when you're in advanced level, you actually can notice that there is no way that you can have such a perfect cadence when you're talking, as perfect timing as well as pace and everything. That was like way too real to be real.
Indeed. However, if you think of it, perhaps when you're an advanced learner, that's what you're seeking, right?
Yeah, which is fine. Nevertheless, you're never going to achieve it. Okay, you can always strive for it, but you're never gonna achieve it. I mean, it's impossible. It's literally a machine. There's nothing wrong with that,
Definitely.
of course. You can have a C2 perfectly verified speaking level of English.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you are going to speak like that all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I remember this piece of interesting information. Years ago, we were having these pronunciation and intonation lessons, and I remember that I had to teach students to repeat. So I will tell them that the native speaker wouldn't speak like perfect as this audios.
Correct.
They will be like, okay, so let me. Okay, right. So the thing is that the thing is doing this and doing that. Okay, so a human, because the way their brain is wired, you may repeat words, and especially if you're British, you may end up repeating, certain sounds depending on the word. And I remember it was a pretty fun class of making them pronounce and intonate in not the correct way, if they wanted to sound natives. So that was the gist.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So now that actually, this issue is also, of course, very evident. Perhaps for our listeners, it was not as obvious to notice which ones were AI or not. And this is also going back to the original point that is not useful for any of us, like in that instance, like that it is like kind of like generated, right?
Yeah.
But just because you have a really a high understanding of the language, like you fully understand it, and you have like gotten so used to listening to it that you would know these little intricacies that are not quite correct, right?
Yeah.
However, if that is your level, then why would you be using this, right?
Indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
And for a beginner, they're not gonna notice it. However, they're also speaking like way too fast. Like for instance, this kind of cadence is way too fast to like follow if you are in the beginners and even intermediate levels. Perhaps even our listeners were struggling understanding what they were saying since they were talking too fast. Again, like AI, at least not right now, doesn't have a good time at adapting what you say and how you say it. However, again, this is again about your understanding of the language. So I brought another one,
Okay.
and this one I'm gonna tell you already that it's AI, right? But this is in French, and now you have to tell me how you know that this is AI or not.
Tu as déjà essayé de faire une blague à une IA? Soit elle l'ignore, soit elle te l'explique. Pas vraiment le meilleur partenaire de conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's AI.
I mean,
It's AI. You say that as well. But it's so I don't understand French that well. However, it was the way it spoke, not like the content that I didn't understand, but the way it actually spoke and the cadence.
Yeah, but could you explain that as a French speaker? Why not? Like why that's off? Like for instance, you were perfectly able to do that when you were like in the English ones, but in this ones, perhaps since I have already told you that it was an AI, it would be like no, okay. But normally, at least in my case, like when I'm listening to this, even though that I speak some French, I have to like really try to be like, this is AI. So perhaps for an intermediate, like they wouldn't notice a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great.
So quite a digital divide there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, like the problem with AI is that I would say that like the conclusion here is that AI is having such a hard time aligning with a person's needs as well as their capabilities that in the end is not perfectly useful. Of course, I do consider that it can be a great support, perhaps to like revise the lessons that you have done. As a matter of fact, I have to admit that I use a lot of ChatGPT. So it reads for me the things that I don't want to read.
Yeah, I know the problem you have not liking to read.
So of course, like this is a robot. However, it's still doing what I needed to do. Okay,
Yeah.
that's one thing. And also like perhaps you were having a conversation with your teacher and you're like, okay, I want to practice the sentences once again, and then you can go to the AI.
Yeah. Now, quite a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I can see that, and the AI they use is like, I think it's not that much of a big thing. But when correcting writing, you can immediately tell when someone's been using these kind of programs to have a perfect writing. And it's so easy because I actually told one of the groups that I have, is like, girls, I know how you speak. I mean, we're having these tutoring lessons twice a week. I can hear you. I can see the way you speak. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to do such a perfect writing because I can tell that it's not you doing it. No, but I looked in the dictionary and stuff. Even though you did, I can tell that it's not 100% just dictionary.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a tricky one. Try not to do it. Even though you want to sound okay. And more often than not is because they don't do their homeworks. So they want to do it last minute. So it's easier just to use AI, like write an article for me with this stuff, with this topic and this length and stuff. But it's just, yeah.
So in the end, you have to be really cautious, right? I mean, in the end, it can happen whatever you were like what you were mentioning a moment ago, that you were kind of concerned that you would lose your own criteria.
This over-reliance on AI is a fact. I can tell it in my own skin that that it does happen. However, it's not like a dependency, like not a drug stuff.
Yeah, I mean, let's not go that far.
So you can, there's still some hope on working on our cognitive skills with the help of AI at times, but not always.
Yeah, exactly. Like, have it as a support, maybe.
Definitely.
But don't make it do the entire thing. And I mean, in many cases, like, I feel like it's a little bit, even a little insulting. Like, in some cases, actually, I have had some writings that say, yeah, sure, let me write for you the perfect.
You had the prompts as well, and you had the answer. Oh my God. I don't know. We're so lazy. Humans are so lazy. Anyhow, so long story short, would you promote AI-driven language coaching, or you will just use AI for specific, for like just modeling your learning, but not for coaching or for guiding you? Or
no, guidance, not at all. Again, I would take it as a really good tool to like revise something that you have already learned, okay?
And to augment your learning environment, but not to actually depend just on that guidance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Like, I mean, you can have your lesson about, I don't know, past perfect with your teacher. They explain it, whatever, and then you go with the exercises. And instead of, I don't know, by the way, writing is also very good, especially handwriting. So don't stop doing that. That you can like do these little things with the AI tutor. And since you have already had the lesson, you would understand what things are like probably going the way that you want it to go, rather than just like the generic robotic soulless answers.
Yeah. Well, it can always be programmed to have this effective computing.
Wow.
I'm not sure to what extent. I remember that. I mean, a thing that constantly comes to mind when people are talking about the lessons they got, at least in our school, they're pretty happy with teachers because they have this nuance of psychological experts, right? It's like, you had a bad day. Okay, no worries. What happened? Tell me more. Okay, perfect. So, we can actually apply this in today's lesson. We can do this and that. So they like having, I believe 50% of your learning is also some psychology.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely necessary. I mean, you're human. You have your emotional needs as well. So it's fine that you also you will also find some encouragement from your teacher.
Definitely, and modulate the learning to your emotions plays it's key if you want to have this like really holistic learning process, because otherwise you have teachers who don't do that, but I think there's not much comparison between them and AI.
Correct, exactly. And I mean, if, for instance, as you have mentioned, perhaps your student has had a bad day, you're not gonna be like, oh yeah, well, anyway, let's go with the lesson. Of course, you're gonna try to professionally follow through your lesson plan. However, you are going to instinctively adapt it to what your student is going through at that moment, especially on one-to-one lessons. So
definitely.
In the end, I do think that AI tutors can be useful, okay? And AI is definitely developing, and all these common complaints that people have brought upon are not really that factual. However, they won't replace us. At least not for now.
No, at least for our generation, they won't.
What am I gonna do when I'm in my 60s?
You will rely on AI.
But what do you think? I would like to know, what is your experience with AI, if you have found something really weird or if it's actually suiting your needs. If you cheat with AI, if you cheat on your learning with AI. Or why don't you write a message and then let's see if we can actually see if it's written by AI or not.
Yeah, so I want to make a side note before we actually finish. And it's the fact that AI does indeed help. We've been working for like a year now on this augmented learning experience online platform, which some of you may already know. We've been using online platform for quite a long time now, especially where you can have plenty of information, both models and exam models, and all the skills the English has and the language has for you to practice lessons. And now I think it's going to come with the final result is going to come with a pretty nice surprise when it comes to the interaction the platform has with the learner. So we invite you to check on our online platform if you want to have a holistic learning where you have mostly human interaction, but also some AI, which completes this process of learning.
It is also worth mentioning that the content is human-made.
That's true. Content is 100% human-made. There's no AI behind.
Oh, by the way, if you're curious and want to listen to my conversation with my English AI tutor, yeah, you can go for it after this episode, okay? Well, that'll be it for today. And thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel as well.
And see you in the next chapter.
Yep. So take care and bye.
Bye.
Bye, Rox.